Imagine a single substance that extends your life by centuries, that allows you to fold space, to travel between stars without moving through the space in between, that unlocks visions of the future so vivid they feel more real than the present, and that, if you stop taking it, will kill you within days.
Now, imagine that this substance exists in only one place in the known universe, a single desert planet. Brutal, waterless, crawling with creatures the size of skyscrapers. And every empire, every religion, every economy in the galaxy depends on it completely, and always has.
This is the Spice Melange. This is Arrakis. And this is why Dune is not just science fiction, it is the most precise political allegory ever written. And it was published in 1965.
Let's start with the basics, because the spice is more layered than most people realize even after watching the films. Melange, that's the formal name, is produced only on Arrakis, also called Dune. It's a byproduct of the life cycle of the sandworms, enormous creatures some hundreds of meters long that dominate the deep desert. The spice seeps up through the sand wherever their larvae are active. Harvested wrong, and a worm the size of a cathedral arrives and swallows your entire operation. Every gram of spice is extracted at mortal risk. So, what does it do? Three things that matter to the civilization built around it. First, it extends human lifespan dramatically. Regular users live centuries. The Spacing Guild navigators and the Bene Gesserit sisterhood have consumed it for so long that it has altered them at a biological level. Second, in sufficient concentration, it unlocks prescience, limited, fractured visions of possible futures. Not perfect prophecy, but enough. Enough to navigate, enough to plan, enough to manipulate. Third, and most critically, the Spacing Guild uses it to enable faster-than-light travel. Guild navigators, humans so saturated with spice they have mutated beyond recognition, can fold space in their minds. Without them, there are no ships between stars. Without spice, there are no navigators. Without Arrakis, there is no spice. Do you see the architecture of the trap?
Frank Herbert started writing Dune in 1959 and published it in 1965. That is the same decade the global economy was reorganizing itself around oil. The same decade the United States was deepening its involvement in the Middle East. The same decade the concept of resource dependence became geopolitical strategy. Herbert was watching all of this, and he built it, faithfully and deliberately, into the bones of his world. The spice is oil. Arrakis is the Arabian Peninsula. The great houses fighting over control of the planet are the Western powers scrambling for access. The Fremen, the indigenous people who have lived on Arrakis for generations, who understand it in ways the colonizers never will, are the people whose land sits on top of the resource everyone else wants. They are not consulted, they are not compensated, they are inconveniences, until they are not. Herbert once said that he intended Dune as a warning about the dangers of charismatic leadership, of placing your civilization's survival in the hands of a single messianic figure. But the resource allegory runs just as deep. The lesson is this: any civilization that builds its entire existence on a single resource it cannot replace and cannot control has already begun its own ending. It just doesn't know it yet. What makes the spice uniquely cruel as a narrative device is the addiction. Not addiction as a background fact, addiction as a structural trap from which there is no escape. Let me show you how deep it goes. The Spacing Guild navigators have been consuming spice gas continuously for thousands of years. They live in tanks of it. They breathe it. They no longer look remotely human. They are not addicts in any ordinary sense. They are organisms whose entire biology has reorganized around a single external substance. Take the spice away and they die. But they were also the only people capable of navigating between stars. The moment humanity became dependent on guild navigators, it became dependent on spice, forever, with no off-ramp. The Bene Gesserit, the most powerful sisterhood in the Imperium, use it to unlock abilities that make them effectively superhuman. The Emperor uses spice revenues to fund the Sardaukar, his unbeatable soldiers. The great houses use it to fund everything. Everybody is downstream of Arrakis. Everybody knows it. Nobody has done anything about it in 10,000 years, because the moment you try to wean yourself off, you lose the prescience, lose the navigation, lose the longevity, and your rivals, who haven't stopped, immediately surpass you. The trap is perfect. Everyone is inside it. Everyone helped build it. Herbert is asking a question that lands as hard today as it did in 1965. What does it cost a civilization to become dependent on something it cannot make, cannot replace, and cannot do without? What does it cost it in choices it can no longer make? In wars it is forced to fight. In people it is forced to sacrifice. The spice is beautiful. The spice is extraordinary. The spice is a cage that looks like a gift.
Paul Atreides arrives on Arrakis as a duke's son, trained, gifted, but fundamentally human. And then the spice begins to work on him. His dreams become visions. His visions become certain. And what he sees, what the spice reveals to him in full, terrifying clarity, is not a triumphant future. It is rivers of blood stretching across 1,000 years, a holy war waged in his name across the stars, killing billions, and him unable to stop it. Because every path he takes to prevent the jihad only makes it more inevitable. This is Herbert's second great warning, buried inside the first. Prescience is not power. Prescience is the most sophisticated prison ever constructed. The more clearly you see the future, the less agency you have to change it. Because every action you take to alter the path is already accounted for in the vision. Paul becomes the most powerful man in the universe and discovers that power, at its apex, is indistinguishable from helplessness. He takes the water of life, a concentrated, ordinarily lethal form of spice, and survives it, and in doing so, becomes something beyond human. And the first thing he says when he comes back to himself is not a declaration of victory. It is grief. He has seen everything. He cannot unsee it. And the only thing he can choose now is how to endure it.
Let's pivot briefly into the science, because Nexus Verge wouldn't be Nexus Verge without asking, how close is any of this to real? Psychoactive compounds that alter cognition are real. Psilocybin, DMT, ketamine, and others have demonstrated effects on pattern recognition, temporal perception, and what researchers call cognitive flexibility. Psilocybin trials at Johns Hopkins have shown measurable effects on neuroplasticity, so the idea of a compound that unlocks latent cognitive potential is not pure fantasy.
Life extension is also an active field. Telomere research, senolytic drugs, caloric restriction pathways. None of it gets us to centuries yet, but the direction of travel is real. As for prescience, genuine foreknowledge of the future, that runs into physics. Causality is not a suggestion. The arrow of time is not negotiable. No compound can give you information that does not yet exist. What it can do is make you extraordinarily good at pattern recognition, at reading the present so accurately that your predictions seem almost prophetic. That may be the most honest version of what Herbert's Spice represents. Not supernatural vision, but human intelligence optimized to its absolute limit. Space navigation without computers, though, we're nowhere close. The mathematics of folding space requires energies and geometries we can't yet model, let alone achieve. That part stays in the fiction, for now.
The Spice is not a plot device. It is the entire argument of Dune condensed into a single image. Every civilization, in Herbert's universe and in ours, faces the same seduction. A resource so valuable, so essential, so transformative that it seems worth organizing your entire existence around. And every civilization that accepts that bargain discovers eventually that the resource owned them far more than they ever owned it. Herbert placed this warning 20,000 years in the future, so we'd be willing to look at it clearly. It didn't work on everyone, but maybe it'll work on you. Next week, we go deeper into Arrakis itself, the ecology of a world that should be dead, and why the Fremen who live there are the most meticulously designed civilization in all of science fiction. Subscribe. I'll see you there.